Okay, Lee, I'm so excited you had a little time to chat with me today.
Me too. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, and especially on this particular week that I know has been a big week for you in the growth of your business, which we may get into in a little bit. But
Yes.
first, you are here because you're one of three people I'm interviewing who are new to the Rock Your Biz training. You've been in for about 6 weeks now, I think.
6 weeks.
About that, yeah.
hmm
And so I'm hoping that it will be helpful for other people to hear what is it like in this very early stages of starting your business.
hmm
And so we'll get to that in a moment. But first, would you be willing to tell the people watching the video a little bit about your history and why it is that you've decided that this academic coach training is something that you'd like to venture into?
Sure. Okay. Well, let's make a long story short. I'm somebody who struggled quite a bit in school, especially high school, and I would say like the first half of my time in college. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was a kid, and there were a lot of struggles that I went through with various degrees of support along the way. But let's just say I had to kind of figure out some of my own solutions along the way so that I could
Yeah.
one day graduate from college. Um, and so after I graduated, I taught English. Well, specifically, I tutored English, mostly one-to-one, for about 10 years. And I was living overseas for most of that. I spent about 8 years of my life in various countries in Asia. And so my sister is an academic coach who is coached by you, of course. And just in you know, our normal conversations, she had kind of briefly mentioned some of the concepts to me. And just that brief mention was enough to like switch on a light bulb in my mind and realize that there are some things that I could be doing with my students to like really enhance their rate of progress in building their English skills, such as
These
like
are these are adult students or these are the gamut of ages?
adult students.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I would say adult students. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, my big question for them at especially at the beginning of our, tutoring relationship with each other was, how are you spending your free time to improve your English skills? And normally I would get back some answers like, oh, sometimes I read an article and sometimes I watch a movie in English and so on. So, there's a lot of improvement that they could be making with the tools that they're using outside of our lessons. And I felt like that has gone a long way with, all of the students that I've brought this up to. And so, of course, one thing leads to another, and I start getting more interested in this coaching idea. And I kind of want to go deeper into like maybe a little bit of like motivation and psychology and all of that kind of stuff. And so here I am. I finally bit the bullet and dived into your program. And yeah, so it's been an interesting 6 weeks since then.
And it's coalesced with your return back to the United States from being gone for about a decade. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I was in Vietnam for about 2.5 years, and I just returned home from there. Yeah, I guess it was about 6 weeks ago. And this seemed like a perfect time to jump into this, and here I am.
I can't imagine actually, you and I haven't talked yet about what culture shock might have been like for you as you're transitioning back and starting a business so quickly when you've transitioned back. Anyway, I don't know, do you have a quick answer for that or is it a longer conversation for another time?
Yeah, let's see if I can come up with a short version. I think I'm kind of used to like turning to new chapters in my life because I've essentially done that every time I've
Yeah.
moved to a different country. And so I knew this move would just totally transform my daily life.
Mhm.
And yeah, there were some bumps along the road. Like it's a little bit tough to get used to some things. I mean, even just the time zone
Yeah.
can really be like a heavy thing to deal with in the beginning.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
every day you get a little bit more used to things,
Yeah.
and now this is my life now.
You know, what you just said made me think. So now I'm moving into your mentor for a second, then we'll jump back to me asking you some questions. But it just made me think when you're ready to write your story on a website, I mean, I know I say you don't need a website right now, but when you're ready for the about page, I think there's something in what you just said that is really a powerful perspective that you have embodied through your life thus far. I mean, certainly your ADHD, your history with ADHD, I don't think I remember that from our interviews before. So that's cool for me to hear. But this, I forget the words you just used, but moving from, you've made some shifts.
Oh, like sort of turning the page to a new chapter in my
Yeah,
life,
new
that kind of
chapter,
thing.
exactly. You've done that several times in some very intentional ways,
Hmm.
or maybe accidental ways. I don't know your life story, but there's something important there that if you write it up in a particular way, teenagers and college students would really identify, because that's what they're doing when they come to you, is they
Mm,
are choosing to turn to a new page, or their family, their parents want them to turn to a new page.
right.
And so, and it's not always the easiest thing. And you have deep embodied experience with how to work with the bumps around that, as well as how to work with the gifts around that. And I think there's a way for you to write that up.
Okay, well, I'm gonna take just a quick note about that so I remember. So turning the page to a new chapter. There we go. It's there. It's funny you mentioned the website. I'm actually like in the process of buying hosting and stuff just to like get at least a placeholder up
Yeah.
there and like kind of take the first step. So
Yeah. Well, and the
yeah.
placeholder can be nice because then you can play with
Hmm.
languaging, as long as what I don't want, and so I'm saying this to you and I'm saying this to any of the listeners, what I don't want is for you to spend hours and hours. Like people can put 30, 40, 50 hours into
Sure.
working on a website. And if you put half of that, a third of that into finding referral partners
Mm,
where that you have strong relationships with and building those relationships, you don't need a website.
right.
So I would rather at the beginning people be working on the referral relationships,
Hmm.
and then you can play with your languaging on the website slowly. Or now that I just said this thing, you might want to take a half hour and just, do a stream of consciousness reflection about turning a new page and what you've learned from that. And but it shouldn't be where your sole focus is. When people are focusing that much time on a website, they're actually hiding
Mm,
from stepping into starting their business.
right. Almost like it's almost a form of procrastination,
Exactly. Because it's
right?
easy. So, oh, I have to do that first. I have to get my business cards first. I have to design my logo first. I have to have a good name for my business first. You don't
Hmm.
need any of that to start coaching, as you know, because you've just gotten your first client.
I did. Yeah, I've
And
had a really cool week here, and this whole thing wasn't something that I was expecting to happen so quickly after I started with you. Um, so yeah, I had a meeting with a parent. In fact, two parents and a student were all there in the meeting together, which is not what I was expecting, but that's how it happened. So I thought the meeting went well, and they agreed to start with me right off the bat. So like that was like a huge deal right then. And everything's been going really great. We had our first session, and there was like a couple, little things that happened at the beginning, like the student showed up a bit late and so on. But we had a great session, and we identified something for us to work on. We implemented a strategy for him to, um, approach his upcoming test in a slightly different way, and I followed up with him the next day, and he actually fulfilled his commitment to me. And
he
yeah,
got
so like,
back to you when you followed up. That's huge.
yeah, I was really happy about that. That was yesterday. I texted him a couple hours after he got home from school and asked him how it went. And he's like, "Yeah, I built the flashcards and I used them last night and I brought them to school and I used them again. And I felt so much better when I was taking the test." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is awesome." Like we had one session and already like something happened differently with his test.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is it's been really great, and I'm just really intrigued to see, what happens over our next couple of weeks together.
Yeah. Well, and so there's something I want to point out about your story that's different than other people's journey into academic coaching. And also, I think points to how my training is different than other people's academic coaching trainings.
Mhm.
You spent your first 6 weeks like consuming the art of inspiring students because you have been an ESL teacher, but you don't come from high school, college, academics. So
Right,
you needed the toolkit. Other people who start Rock Your Biz start in a different place, not necessarily the toolkit, but you consumed that. You did a
right.
beautiful job with your first run through.
Mhm.
But what I noticed the way other trainings are set up is they then you go get some practice clients, but you don't necessarily get paying practice clients.
Yes.
And I know some people are really scared by that. They're like, I want to become a good coach first and then people can
Mm,
start paying. But I'm like, you're going to become a good coach by working with paying clients.
right.
And most people who come to me are transitioning from another kind of work where they're already coming with skills and abilities, so you might as well get paid for that life experience too.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think it's true that my situation is a lot different than a typical new coach that might come to you because my background is only semi-related to education. You know, ESL tutoring is a type of education, but that's a lot different than teaching in a classroom
Right.
or, doing some other type of coaching with teenagers and so on. Um, yeah, and so like I was mentioning earlier, my sister is an academic coach and has been for about 5 years. And so while I would say like it might be a bit of a disadvantage, not having as much education experience, it's a massive advantage having Nicole in my corner
Yeah.
because like I can just have a conversation with her about anything that comes
Yeah.
up, and I can learn so much from her. And
Yes.
there are parents that are in communication with her that their kid might be a good fit for me and so on. So that's
Mhm.
just been so like
So
incredible to
beautiful.
have her there with me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you've got this gift of, in some ways, two mentors. You've
Yeah,
got me, you've got Nicole, and then I mean, there's the community, the mentorship of the community too.
right. And I
And
I do feel like I have a huge responsibility with this one student that I have now. And so I don't know if my sense of my responsibility is different than it would be for another coach, but I feel like this is my opportunity to kind of prove myself,
Mhm.
to show that like I've got the chops to do this.
Yeah.
And so not only is it a big responsibility because this is going to affect the future life of this person, but um, it's also a way for me to just show that I'm capable of doing this.
Yeah. And you are capable.
Mhm.
And there will be some bumps that'll be like, ah, I shouldn't have said that, or oh, I made this mistake. And so don't let those mistakes. I mean, we know from the study cycle that mistakes make us better if we learn and grow from them, right?
Mhm.
So both, and I love your sense of responsibility.
Mm.
And yeah, just want to urge you also to have be gentle on yourself if you run into some of those bumps.
Right. That's a good piece of advice because it's just a matter of time before something happens that's a letdown in some way, right? Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So I know that my trainings are a fire hose of information. Like as soon as you sign up, there's just a ton of stuff that you have to sign up for and get access to. And there's, the toolkit, and then there's the launch your biz instructions, and then there's
Right.
everything in the club. And I know that that can feel overwhelming for people when they first come in. And I'm curious what it was like for you. To come on in and how you navigated all of that onslaught.
Okay. I thought it was okay. Yeah,
Oh,
like
good.
yeah, I was fine with it. Um, it's a tricky situation for you because all of your new clients have totally different needs and amounts of experience, and like some people might need to focus on learning the coaching skills and others might need to focus on building the business and so on. So I think it makes sense to have those compartmentalized in that way. Um, I guess, yeah, I think it all kind of made sense to me. Like you have on the Rock Your Biz thing, you have kind of like an introductory path to go through, which is like opening up the the components, you know, the ABA and the AIS and so on. Yeah, I thought it was okay.
Yeah, good. So what I hear there is that if you work through that introductory module, I've done a pretty good job of guiding you through understanding all of the resources you have available and then how to think about where to start.
Right. Yeah, I was able to figure out. I don't recall needing to ask for clarification
Yeah.
on any of those things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it was okay.
Yeah,
It
good,
worked for me.
good. And
Mhm.
that, what that says to me is the people who are struggling are people who get in and they're excited to get in, but they don't work through the introductory module.
It might be that, but I've also like kind of been around computers for a lot of my life, and you know, figuring out things like this. So maybe I have a bit of an advantage there.
That could be.
But yeah, I'm sure you do get
That could be.
some new coaches that are just like super eager to dive in.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So what has been, I don't know, it's okay if you don't have an answer to this, but I'm curious, like what's been the biggest surprise so far? Because you know, we have a certain idea of what we think a program's going to be like or what we think we want when we choose a program, and then we
Hmm.
dive in and then there's reality. And
Yeah,
I'm curious about that for you.
yeah, sure. I've had some conversations with my sister about this, about how I've been just pleasantly surprised about how
Mhm.
everything's going and how it's all exceeded my expectations. The amount of time and effort and energy that you put into communicating with me and the other coaches has been really great. I think you've built a really great sense of community, and just a lot there are a lot of gems in the ABA and the AIS. There is just so many things, and like all it takes for some students is just like one of those things to click, and it can just be a total game changer for them.
Yeah.
So that's part of why this is so cool, is like I feel like if I encounter a situation for a student, and you know, they feel stuck, and I feel like I just have so many things that I could try with
Hmm.
them because it's all there in the ABA and the AIS and so
Yeah.
on.
And just so people know, ABA is anti-boring approach and AIS is art of inspiring students.
Yes.
um, say a word about what the community calls are like, because this is a different, one thing that's different about this training is I don't teach anyone anything live.
Right.
All the teaching is in pre-recorded videos in the
Mhm.
courses, and then the community calls are just a whole different animal. How would you describe those to people who haven't been to one yet?
Yeah, I would use the word casual. I think it's really casual. Nobody's dressing up for them. Nobody's like being super careful about what they say or how they say it. People are just kind of saying what's on their minds, and maybe they have some questions they want to ask, and ideas they want to bounce off of each other. Um, I think, as you were mentioning before, our networking and our referral partners and so on are a pretty critical component of getting new clients. And these community calls are kind of a way to start going about that. It's just putting yourself out there and getting to know the other coaches and what their niches are, and telling them what your niches are. And yeah, I think it goes a really long way to show up for those.
And what about the practice labs? Because that's the one, or the retrieval practice lab, that's sort of the one more facilitated, structured time. And for
Mhm.
people who don't know, that's where I put people in to breakout rooms and you actually practice leading one of the mini lectures from the anti-boring approach with other people. Is that nerve-wracking? Is it fun? Is it helpful? Like what, tell us about that process.
Let's see. I chose like the easier ones to do with this so far, the ones that I knew the best. So I wasn't nervous about those. I was like, I felt pretty fluent in them already. Um, Now, if I tried to do like one of the mini lectures that I wasn't totally fluent with, yeah, I'd probably feel a little bit nervous about it. But I feel like as I attend more and more of these sessions and get to know the other coaches more, I feel more at ease,
Yeah.
knowing that if I make a mistake, it's like totally fine, and that's part of the process too. So yeah, I think that's kind of my take on that situation.
Good. I know some people are just so frightened at the thought of leading, like being seen by a peer, leading something, and everything. You don't have to do any of this, but it is really the best learning that I've seen. It feels like that 10 minutes that you're teaching a peer is like an hour's worth of gold in terms of
Right.
how it
The
propels you.
spotlight is on you and like multiple
Uh-huh.
people are watching, and yeah, like not everybody's
Yeah,
into that kind of situation, but it certainly goes a long way with
yeah,
reinforcing what you know.
yeah. Well, do you have any tips, like for anybody who's considering joining us in June and you're like, oh yeah, like here's one tip for how to make the most of the materials or organize yourself or whatever.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm a little too new to give advice, but I think showing up for all the Zoom meetings is a great way to go about things.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's kind of just a matter of putting the time in for going through the anti-boring approach and the art of inspiring students. Like there are, there's a substantial amount of time you need to invest in that. And so, yeah, I would say just try to be consistent with that and keep making progress through it, and just try to do a good job whenever you can.
Awesome. I think that's a good consistency would be the
Consistency, yes, it's
wrap
so
up.
key, right? Mhm.
Yeah. So maybe we'll wrap up here with, I'm curious, as like there's never any need to choose a niche
Mm.
when you're building a business, at least not right away. And I know many marketing coaches teach differently, like you must choose a niche, but I don't like people to feel pressured. That said, I think as you start working through the curriculum, the mind starts to wander about who might I most enjoy serving.
Mhm.
And I just am curious to know what's come to you, if those thoughts have come to you.
Okay, they definitely have. Yeah, that was something that I kind of forgot to go over earlier, but I'm very interested in video game addiction, and I think there can certainly be some overlap with video game addiction and poor performance in school. And so the student that I have now, he doesn't have a video game addiction, but I am like thoroughly enjoying our interactions and coaching him and so on. So I'm learning a bit about that, um, being his coach. And yeah, I think my ultimate goal would probably be, this is just ultimate goal based on the knowledge I have now,
Right.
would be to be able to reach a student who is addicted to video games and doesn't want coaching. I would like to be able to help that student. It's a very challenging thing to do, so maybe I don't quite reach that level, but let's see how high I can go.
Well, if there are any parents who have watched this video, I don't know if there are because it's more business, but if they are and they heard you just say that, they're salivating. They're like, we want to
Right,
get our hands on that guy because my kid
right.
doesn't is
I
addicted
just
and doesn't want coaching.
I feel like there must be a way, and I know it's going to take a lot of trial and error, and there's going to be so many huge bumps along the road, but I think there's a way to do this.
Yeah.
So let's see.
I'm very excited that you would say that. And partially because about a year and a half ago, I put out a video saying we need more coaches with these identities. And I mentioned like folks of color, queer folks, and I mentioned men. We
Mm,
need more men or boys out there. I think would benefit from not just having another woman educator trying to, I'm going to say a funny thing, but trying to manhandle their habits,
right,
but
right.
actually being able to connect with someone who has their gender identity
Hmm.
and who might be able to relate to them differently than women will. So
Right. If there are any men listening to this conversation right now, if you feel like you would enjoy, helping a young student alter the course of their life into like a really positive direction and do better in school and have better relationships with their parents even, yeah, look into this. Look into it.
I think that's a great place to end. And maybe I will say, for now, uh, in 6-ish months, less actually, in about 4-ish months, you'll be invited to be one of the trained coaches on my webpage so people can find you that way. But in the meantime, if folks are curious about you, is there an email address that they can reach out to?
Oh, absolutely. So my email is my first name, Lee, Lee, 355 at gmail.com.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
LEE355 at Gmail.
That's yeah. I've had the same email address since I was a teenager and it just kind of stuck. So
So smart that you didn't choose a dumb name, that you just chose a simple
I'm
name
so
with a
glad I
number.
did.
Yeah. So smart. So
Kept it
smart.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope folks reach out to you. I hope folks reach out to me if they're interested in starting a coach training program. And I'm just really grateful for you and excited to track your progress as you go through the rest of the year.
Well, I am grateful too because you just have a lot of knowledge and great advice, and things are just moving along in such a great way. So,
Good.
yeah, I'm really excited about how this is all going.
Good. Well, take care to you and hang around because I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll talk a little bit more.
Okay.
Bye, everyone watching the video.